Hello everyone, welcome back to another edition of our Sky Tonight program. My name is Seth Mayo, I'm the Curator of Astronomy for the Lowman Planetarium. In this edition, we're going to cover the dates of July 12th through July 18th, 2021. We're going to start things off by talking about a nice grouping of solar system objects and a conjunction of two planets in the west early this week. Then we're going to move on to a beautiful view of the Milky Way. This is the best time of year to see it, so I'll talk more about that and where you can find it. And we'll end with looking at two more planets that are now joining our evening sky. So let's get to it. Now, early this week, if you're looking towards the west, you'll have a wonderful view of solar system objects that have gotten really close to each other, and this is really nice just after sunset here. And if we look, you can find easily the moon. That's probably one of the first things you'll see. It's a very thin crescent, but it will be a nice shape. And then below it, the brightest planet in the sky, the planet Venus. That shows up even before any of the other stars are out, if it's high enough in the sky. We're going to go just a little bit later, and if we do, we'll see a few more things around this area. We'll zoom in a bit, and you'll find Venus there, and to the left is another planet that will be slightly reddish, and of course that's the planet Mars. We've talked a lot about that, still hanging in the western sky. And so Mars and Venus are very close, with the crescent moon just above. And what's really nice about the moon is it's nestled in some fairly bright stars that make up an asterism called the Sickle, but it's also the head of Leo the Lion. And I know we've talked about Leo being a spring constellation that you can still see pretty far into the summertime. So the head, which looks like a sickle, again, that's the asterism of the lion, right here is sort of wrapped around the crescent moon. Of course, the rest of Leo, you see the body here and the tail kind of reaching higher in the sky. There's Leo the Lion, very famous constellation, of course, one of the zodiac signs. So as you can see, Venus and Mars are really close to each other on Monday the 12th, but it gets even better the following evening on the 13th when these two planets get even closer to one another. And so let's move ahead one evening, and you'll find by the 13th, Venus will be just above Mars. And technically speaking, they'll be within half a degree of one another. That's about the width of a full moon. Now here in Stellarium, our moon is commonly exaggerated so you can see it a little bit better, especially when we're zoomed out from the sky. So let's put the moon back to its true angular diameter. Let's change a couple settings here. And if we do, then you could tell that the moon would be able to fit in between Venus and Mars on that evening. Now, they're going to look really close with your naked eyes, but if you have binoculars or a telescope, you'll see that angular diameter, that distance between them, a little more clearly. So let's continue zooming in there, and you'll really see a stark difference between these two worlds. Venus by far is the brightest planet. It comes pretty close to Earth as well. It's about the same size as our planet, with a very thick atmosphere of carbon dioxide, which traps the heat on the surface, drives temperatures up to 900 degrees. But that atmosphere, which is 90 times thicker than Earth's, reflects a ton of light from the sun, actually more light than it receives onto the surface. And that high albedo, as we call it, the high reflectivity, makes Venus really, really bright, combined with its close approach to Earth at times. We'll zoom out from Venus and you'll see the very different looking Mars, which is much farther away from us right now because of the way our orbits are sort of lined up, and it is half the size of Earth. We'll zoom into it, and its atmosphere is far different than Venus. It has a very thin atmosphere of carbon dioxide, only 1% the thickness or the density of ours, mostly made up of CO2, which doesn't really trap the heat because there's not as much of it like Venus. So it's very cold on Mars, but it doesn't have that high albedo like Venus does, making it a dimmer planet generally. So if you do look at these through a telescope, maybe you can take a picture of these worlds. You really see the difference in brightness between them. If you're an astrophotographer, it may be kind of a neat opportunity to see these two worlds. And again, the moon would fit in between those planets here, if you could kind of squish the moon in there from our perspective. So it's nice to have this, what we call a conjunction, when two or more celestial objects get very close to one another. And of course, they're not going to stay this way all week. As we move ahead, the dates here, we'll go to Wednesday the 14th. You'll see Venus already move a bit above Mars, and then continue on to the 15th, 16th, then the 17th and 18th. By the weekend, you'll see Venus has moved quite a bit farther from Mars, which is down here. And Venus moves very quickly around the sun since it's pretty close to it. And so it doesn't stay in the same spot for too long. So you'll notice they change. But it's really cool to kind of watch this play out from the beginning of the week when these two planets are really close with the moon nearby, and then move along here as you see it get really close on the 13th and continue to separate from there as we move to the weekend. And it's always great to watch kind of the orbital dynamics play out in the sky. As we shift our gaze towards the east, where objects rise from, we'll find that early in the week is the best time to see a dim, hazy object that reaches across the entire sky. And that's because early in the week, the moon is still a thin phase here, so you don't see as much of it. It won't obscure the sky as much. So going back to this area, we're going to speed time up just a little bit. And I'd say this time of the year here in the Northern Hemisphere is the best time to see the Milky Way, which unfortunately many of us cannot see due to light pollution, and all of that extra light in the sky makes it hard to see one of the most beautiful sights in nature that is above all of us, that we all have an opportunity to see, but we just can't because of our technology. So we go to about the evening sky around the 9, maybe 10 o'clock time frame here, around there. And what's really great is right when it gets dark out, high enough in the east, you'll see that band of light called the Milky Way right there. And the Milky Way is such a gorgeous object. To ancient observers, it resembled a river of milk. That's why in ancient Greek it was called Galaxias Kyklos, which means milky circle. Galaxias is where we get the word galaxy from. That means a giant collection of stars and planets and gas and dust that we live in. So we do live in what's called our Milky Way galaxy. So this is the best time to see the Milky Way. You can see it for pretty much the entire night, from sunset all the way till sunrise, when you see the Milky Way just kind of drift across the sky from east to west that we see here. It's also a great time of year to see it because we see the densest, thickest part, which is actually really bright, especially if you're in a dark location right in here. And as we've mentioned, especially in the last couple episodes, these great summer constellations of Scorpius the Scorpion, which looks kind of like a big S-like shape here. That's a great summer constellation, more in the southern parts of the sky. And then we have the asterism of the teapot that you find here, which is actually the stars of Sagittarius, the half-man, half-horse constellation, a centaur that you may know of as well. Here are the pictures of them, just to give you a sense of the mythological kind of look of these objects here. But turning those off and leaving the lines up, we'll find this area is particularly bright in the Milky Way. And if you want to find that bright area, look no further than the tail of Scorpius and kind of the sort of the bow and arrow of Sagittarius. Again, putting the pictures up, you'll see this area here. So we call this the galactic bulge, which is the center of our galaxy. And naturally, if it's the center, there's a lot of stars and stuff kind of packed into this region of the sky, making it look really bright as seen from our location within the galaxy. So it's a great area to look at. And not only that, being the center of our galaxy, we know there's a super massive black hole there as well. So let's fly around the universe a little bit to get a better sense of the Milky Way. Here in Space Engine, we can really appreciate our place in our Milky Way galaxy. And in this perspective, we can see Earth in the middle here, and you'll notice how the Milky Way does wrap around our entire planet. That Milky Way seemingly embedded into our sky. You can see all the way around us here. And of course, different areas appear differently. As we go past the sun, you'll see the sun does obscure some of it here. But you'll notice that there are light and dark patches. The Milky Way has all sorts of interesting structures here. And what's fun to do is we can zoom out from here. We're going to move very quickly, leaving Earth, our sun, and our solar system. And as we go far enough, you'll see how we are embedded in this disk and how that relates to what we see in our sky. And our galaxy is quite large. It holds up to 400 billion stars with many more planets, gas and dust, and other interesting celestial objects. And it's quite thin in comparison to its diameter. On average, it's about 1,000 light years thick. Now, that's a lot for us. That's a huge distance. But if you compare it to the 120,000 light year diameter of our galaxy, that's quite small. So its ratio of its thickness compared to its diameter is quite large. And you can kind of see some of that as we fly farther and farther out. There you can see the spiral shape of our Milky Way, and we live in the outskirts of it here. And that disk, again, is very thin. If you want to compare it to something that we can relate to, a pancake is actually too thick. Its thickness compared to its diameter is not right, actually. To get a better comparison, think about a CD. I know we don't really use this as much anymore, but a CD's thickness is closer to thickness of our Milky Way if you compare it to its diameter. The ratio is pretty close. Even with that being said, a CD might still be too thick in comparison. So our Milky Way really has an interesting structure with a very, very thin thickness and a very large diameter, as we see here. Now, right over here is our galactic center, and that's called Sagittarius A. So we can actually look that up here in Space Engine. And this galactic center is not close to us. It's about 25,000 to about 28,000 light years away. We live in the outskirts of our galaxy, and so we're quite a distance from our galactic center there. But at that center is something really, really interesting. So we're gonna fly right to it. Again, anywhere from 25,000 to 28,000 light years away. And what we find there is a black hole. Now, this is just an artist's rendition of what might be around this black hole. We're not quite sure of its appearance around it just yet. All right, but what we know is that there's an object that's 4 million times more massive than our sun right in there, a black hole that we cannot see. Black holes are invisible because they have so much gravity. They're so dense with so much gravity that light cannot escape them. So we can't actually see the black hole itself, but we can possibly see things around it. And the way we've actually come to understand this black hole is we've actually noticed stars going around it at tremendous speed, stars that are really close to the center here. And by understanding these stars and how they move and their velocities, we can infer or determine the black hole, what it's like, its physical characteristics, and even its mass. And so it's pretty hefty if you compare it to our own sun. So it's called Sagittarius A because you can find it within the constellation of Sagittarius. We don't have a picture just yet of this black hole, at least around the black hole, but that may come within the next couple of years from what's called the Event Horizon Telescope, a collaborative sort of telescope project of all these radio telescopes around the world that are put together to collect data to give us an image, hopefully, around Sagittarius A. That collaboration gave us this image of a black hole in the center of a galaxy called M87, which we've talked about recently, but we haven't done that with our own Milky Way's galactic center. So that may come, and we'll have a better understanding of this area of our own Milky Way. And lastly, if you're looking below the Milky Way here in the east, finally joining our evening sky are two more planets. And we've been waiting for this because these two planets were in the morning for quite some time and have now transitioned to the evening. Before midnight, you can see both of them. So starting around maybe the 9:45, maybe 10 o'clock time frame, at least in this area locally, in the southeast, you'll have the planet Saturn right there. And Saturn is one of my favorite planets to look at, especially through a telescope, because it looks so surreal. It's amazing to see those rings. It almost seems like you're dangling like a little toy Saturn in front of your telescope. It just doesn't even look like a real thing, but you're actually seeing this amazing gas planet with a beautiful ring system around it. So I love when it's out at a convenient time. And not only is Saturn there, but if we go a little bit later in the evening here, more closer to maybe the 10:30, even 11 o'clock time frame, we'll have another planet rising, and that's even brighter. That's the planet Jupiter. Another great planet to look at through a telescope. You can see its cloudy bands in its atmosphere, but also the moons. The Galilean moons are really great as well. So these are wonderful planets to spot, especially if you have binoculars or a telescope. And even if you don't, that's okay. They're going to look like these bright non-twinkling objects rising in the east. The best time of year to see them, at least for this year, will be kind of late summer, and especially in the fall when you can see them real early and for most of the night. But already you can start to see both of these even before midnight at the same time in the east. So stay tuned for that. Hey, you made it through another edition of our Sky Tonight program. Thank you for watching and supporting us. And if you're in the area in Daytona Beach, please stop by our Loman Planetarium. We're running shows every single day. We got a lot of great programs going on. And if you want any more information about that, please check out our website. So, hope to see you back here again. Take care, and of course, happy stargazing.